Welcome to Fright Fix. My name's Sook.
My name's Celia.
Celia, how are you doing today on this wonderful, warm, early summer?
Sunny day. No, it's lovely. I feel like last time we had an episode, it was pouring with rain. We didn't know when it was going to end. And now it's sunny, the birds are chirping, and just in a great mood. How are you?
My favourite thing about this weather is that the grass grows a lot faster, and I love nothing more than mowing the lawn. I've started like mowing it super slowly, just so the experience lasts a bit longer as well. So,
is it like therapeutic?
Oh man, that's when I'm truly
at peace.
One with myself, at peace.
Oh, it's the little things, Soph. It's the little things.
This week, we'll be reviewing the 2013 horror movie, The Conjuring, directed by James Wan. It stars Vera Farmiga as Lorraine Warren and Patrick Wilson as Ed Warren.
Find your Fright Fix anywhere you listen to podcasts and follow us on social media at Fright Fix Podcast.
Now, before we continue, we have to give you the obligatory spoiler warning. So if you haven't already watched the movie, what are you waiting for? Just pause this podcast, go watch it and come back.
So, in 1971, Roger and Carolyn Perron move into a farmhouse with their 5 daughters, only to be plagued by paranormal activity. Reaching the end of their tether, Carolyn requests the help of Lorraine and Ed Warren, well-known demonologists and ghost hunters. The pair find many ghosts haunting the house, but none as terrifying as Bathsheba, a witch who possesses Caroline and forces Ed Warren to perform an exorcism for the first time.
Ooh.
I feel like when you said The Conjuring, I hope all the audience went, yes, horror film.
Oh man, every time I hear the words The Conjuring, it just like makes me happy on the inside.
Yeah, it's just one of those classics, isn't it? And the word The Conjuring, it's so good. It just says it all.
Yeah, do you know that the film was very almost called The Warren Files?
Oh no, I don't like that. I think The Conjuring's so much better.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it is. It's a bit more mysterious.
Yeah, the Warren Files could be anything. It could be, well, the X-Files or something to do with crime or law or something.
It does, doesn't it? It does sound like that, doesn't it? It doesn't sound creepy enough. Conjuring, like, just sounds magical and like witches and whatnot.
Fits the bill.
Yeah. So, what did you think?
So, it's typical horror film, I think. There's not too many layers to it. You know, last week we were talking about there's so much behind some horror films, you know. This is just, you get your scares. It has all of the tropes while also being very playful with the way that it does it. But at the end of the day, for me, it's just one of those fright fixes almost, where you get your fix of horror and you get that spine-tingling feeling, but you're not left with too much to think about afterwards, you know? Just is a very nice piece of horror. Yes. I like the fact that it's based on a true story and it kind of gives it a bit of gravitas. And it leaves you with a sense that, oh, maybe this could happen to me, because if it's true, then, you know, it leaves you wondering if you're not a skeptic. And it does have some really cool haunting ideas. I picked up on a few that I'd never seen before, and you can correct me if they were in other ones. But
yeah.
You know, the voice is not playing back on the recording when you know, I thought that was cool. I think the clapping game where the ghost comes back,
that's creepy.
I like that one. I think that was really creepy. Yeah, the hanging sound, you know, I think it was more towards the beginning of the film. There was a few scenes where they used the sound of a rope when someone has been hanged.
Oh, I didn't remember that bit.
There's a bit where Lorraine Warren's walking down to the creek or whatever's in front of the house.
Yes, that river by the house, behind the house.
Yeah. And there's like I don't know how to explain it. It is the sound of someone being hanged.
Sure.
But you only hear the sound. And I thought that was really interesting because it's an unmistakable sound that you probably wouldn't mistake it for anything if you knew what it was.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, there's hints throughout the film of they've really thought about how they can play on the ghosty trope of a haunted house and push it.
Yeah, 100% agree.
What do you think? What was your overall thoughts?
Pretty much everything you just said, really. It is very tropey. This movie kind of like, it doesn't leave any question unanswered. It kind of answers every question, and I found it kind of like leaves everything tied up in a neat bow at the end. And one thing I couldn't help feeling for this, especially the second half of the movie, was if Scooby-Doo had an adult live action movie, it would be this.
I like that.
And just that whole kind of like, you know, like the earlier episodes of Scooby-Doo when they'd like someone's haunting something and then the gang have to, I don't know, solve the mystery. It kind of felt a bit like that, which in itself isn't a bad thing. I just kind of found it quite amusing, to be honest. But this film, for me, I don't know too much about the backstory because, you know, it is allegedly based on a true story. But as a movie, just in itself, it's pretty important to me. Not because it's good or bad or anything, but more so because it was like the first horror movie I'd like properly watched,
right,
or was forced to watch. And I remember being absolutely terrified the first time around. And like this is my second time watching the film, and like I wasn't as scared the second time around. Like I wasn't, you know, like hiding behind someone this time around. I think I could have comfortably just watched it on my own.
Yeah.
But I think it holds up. I think it's still a very solid movie. Yeah, I don't think anything's aged particularly badly, considering it is like 10 years old now or something, or give or take.
It is. And, you know, when you're saying that it's the first kind of horror film that you saw, I do think that this was kind of an introduction for a lot of people into horror. Because I remember when it came out and I was at school, there was almost a kind of, you were popular if you went to the cinema and you saw The Conjuring, you know, like every teenager watched it. And I think I was at that age where you kind of wanted to show that you weren't scared of things like that. And everyone was like, oh, The Conjuring's really scary. And you go, oh, it wasn't scary. I don't care. You know, like all the kids trying to prove to each other that they're not scared. And so I think it has something in that, is that, like we said, it's not too deep. There's not too many kind of gory details, because this is kind of just after Saw, I think. So it's kind of bringing it back from that gruesome, basically just can you stomach it?
That torture porn type stuff.
Exactly. To can you hold your nerve? Which is a completely different type of film, I think.
It's just, I've seen a lot of horror movies since this one, and I still think this movie is like the master of that kind of just staring down corridors or looking down basements or anything.
Yeah. And what I like about it is that they don't spend too much time setting up the scene. Like the ghosts are there from the beginning, you know, they're tapping on the walls, they're creeping up the stairs. Like it doesn't take long for you to get scared.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite of I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in This House, where you're waiting for something for so long and then nothing happens. Oh, this is like you don't even have a chance to
this is
get comfortable with the family, or it's just
especially the first 45 minutes is just non-stop, like scare after scare. So
I don't know how they lasted that long, to be honest. Without
something I noticed just this time around, which I didn't really pick up on the first time, but you know when we're first introduced to the family, the camera is inside the house looking out of the window. That's the very first shot you see the family, and then the camera pulls out and it kind of follows them. Well, you know, the camera's still in the house, but it kind of follows them come into the front door. And it felt like, is that the demon watching them from inside the house? Because you know, you could have just done like the Shining, where it follows the car going down the road or anything, but it's very kind of, I think that was quite intentional.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's made me think actually that a lot of the beginning of the film, you never see the family outside of the house. They're always in the house. So yeah, it's very much tied to the house itself. Like the husband goes away, but the family's staying. I think it's when Carolyn goes to see the Warrens. That's the first time we see her out of the house or off the ground.
I think so. I think you might be right, actually. I wonder why that was. Maybe it was budgetary reasons.
It could be budgetary, but also you could say that it's to do with the fact that it's they're trapped by the house. You know, you watch them come in from like you say, from this kind of perspective of the house, and then they get drawn in, and essentially they don't leave until it comes to the
house clutches onto them. Their souls.
Yeah, with its creepy long fingers. So, what did you think of the casting and acting in the film?
Well, I couldn't fault it. I mean, look, with the Ed and Lorraine Warren's casting, like Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, like they are just spot on. Oh man, the chemistry between the two, like they've been in about 5 movies together now or something. I kind of lost count, but I could just watch them. If they released a movie together every year, like a silly ghost story movie every year, I would just keep watching it. Even if it's like Ed and Lorraine Warren go to the corner shop and solve the milk ghost or something. Like I would keep watching it. And I mean, on a unrelated note, I watched the third Conjuring movie.
Oh yeah.
And like it was just seeing them again in there. It was just felt like two characters you're familiar with, and you just see them again. They're two of my favorite characters genre wide, like the chemistry between them.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like Ron Livingston as the dad. Like he's just great in everything he's in, and it's nice to see him play a more kind of secondary, subdued kind of role. Like not, he's not the hero of the film, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I thought all the kids were pretty cool as well. I mean, what were your thoughts on the cast?
Well, about the casting of the Warrens, absolutely the same. I mean, I would actually just like to see their relationship as well. I'm not a massive romance film watcher, so I wouldn't want that, but I would like to see them from when they met and how they got into this kind of...
Sure.
I mean, we do get that throughout the films, but, just because their chemistry is so good, they could hold their own, just talking about their relationship and their family and things like that. And I think Vera does a really good job of portraying the emotion that she feels as a clairvoyant. I think, that heartbreaking bit where she has that vision of her daughter in the water.
Oh man.
It was and she was on the phone to her mother saying, put my daughter on the phone, put my daughter on the phone, put my name. And you could see the terror in her eyes and her face.
It felt real, didn't it?
It felt really real. And that relief when she was like, she's fine, she's fine. It felt like a real mother and a real daughter, and she really had this kind of premonition. So I think they're great. My only fault with the choices, and it's not a fault because if it is allegedly based on a true story, this family did have that many children. I think it's 5 girls, or something like that. But it felt like they could have done the same thing with 2 children, or maybe. So I got confused about which child was doing what and how each one of them were affected, because there were so many of them. And
they all just blurred into one for me. I could not pick them out in a lineup or anything.
I think that's the thing. I think apart from Joey King, who played Christine, I think she was the one that had her foot grabbed in the bed and she was terrified, and she was really good. The others kind of blended in together, and I didn't really get, and I just thought that they could have done it with 2 children or maybe 3 children. But it felt like there were just a few too many for them to really have a character to them.
Yeah.
That would be my only thing.
Yeah. No, that's totally fair. I mean, the fact that, they did just all blur into one for me. They all like wore those at nighttime. They all wore those kind of long nightgown type things. They had the long straight hair. They kind of, I mean, man, when they were wearing those long nightgowns, they kind of looked like ghosts.
Yeah.
Demons or something. There were a few moments where they're just like, they're standing on the stairs or whatever.
Yeah, they were scary as the ghosts. Yeah, but I get that this is based on a true family who had that many children. And I think it must have been hard to think, okay, what are we going to do with this many children? How do we make sure that they're all part of it?
Sure.
Because you can't just have one thing happen to each of them. You have to have, a kind of build-up of things. And I think, so they had one that was sleepwalking and banging her head on the wall. That was her thing.
Yeah.
Christine, I think that's the right one, had her foot grabbed and thinks she sees something.
Yeah.
There's the moody teenager, which is in every film. Who didn't really do much. And then there was another one there was 2 more actually. Yeah, there were 5 altogether. There was a young one who did the clapping game with her mum. Then there was another one that didn't do anything.
Was she the one with the imaginary friend? Was it Rory or whatever?
Yeah, that was the little one.
Yeah.
And then there was another one that nothing happened to.
Sure.
But she was in the same room as Christine when and she was like, oh, there's something behind the door. And she got up and looked, but that was her thing.
Yeah, it's probably difficult for them to take any real artistic liberty with it, because I think at the time the movie was made, Elizabeth Warren was still alive, and the mother Perron or whatever, I forget her name, was, I think they visited the set of the movie and would have consulted on it. So if you nipped one of their children out of the movie, maybe they would have taken it offensively, or I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Or something. So
I know that they're tied to what it's based on. So that, and just from a film point of view, it was that there might have been too many. And if they had the artistic license to be able to maybe get rid of a few, that would have been fine as well.
Yeah, but there was something about this movie where, because there was so many people in the house kind of felt bustling and alive a little bit to a degree. Whereas,
yeah,
I mean, how many horror movies have you seen where there's like two people living in a large house
yeah.
and it just
Every
feels
other room's empty. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I've got a question for you actually. Cold bedrooms, funky smells. What's that all about?
Well, that is a good question. I mean, the cold room thing, I've always thought, and this is my theory about why ghosts make a room cold.
Yeah.
Is that they suck all the life out of wherever they are. So you think of death as obviously cold, and it also sucks all the emotion out of a place. And that I suppose it's supposed to be that it puts you on edge when you shiver. Even if it's out of cold and not out of being scared, it puts you on edge.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of what that feeling is that, and another thing about being cold is we're all cold all the time. We could walk into a room right now and have a shiver and pass by. And I think,
no.
You know, you could think, oh, is that a ghost? What is that? I think it's a really clever thing that films do, because everybody has a little cold patch in their house or a draft under a door that makes sure that hairs on the back of your neck stand up. But I do think that the cold and the smell and everything like that, because it's based off a true story, they've stuck very much with the story from the Perrons. Yeah. And they say that they had cold spots in all the room and that there was a sulfur putrid smell coming out of the rooms that they think the demons were in.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there were loads of scenes in the movie where kids kept complaining about a smell. Yeah, I thought there may have been significance to it.
I just think it's that kind of putrid smell of death. That's what I thought. And it's a warning and an omen to what's to come.
Oh no.
I feel like maybe you never see a ghost just come up to your bed and be like, rah. They can't just walk up to you and say, here I am in my full apparition. Maybe it's the different senses that can be targeted, because you've got the cold touch, you've got the smell, you'll then get the sight of a ghost. It kind of hits all the senses at different times. Yeah. And then when you put it all together, you have this possession of some sort. Yeah.
And also was there any, so every time it hit 7 minutes past 3 o'clock, some ghostly activity would happen. And the movie says it's something to do with, that's the time Bathsheba had hung herself from the tree or something, right? So is the 7 past 3 just an arbitrary time they've picked, or is there some kind of significance to that?
I don't know. I mean, from the true story, they say that it's 5:15 in the morning.
Oh.
That certain things happened. And that's the only time I could find when I was looking up kind of what the story behind it was. And it didn't ever say anything about 7 minutes past 3. So I do think that was just something that they took, because it's a very good indicator of the first signs of a haunting. Because if your clock stops, you're not going to be like, oh my God, we need to get out of the house, there's a ghost. You're going to be like, that's annoying, that's weird. And if they all stop. Yeah. And so I think it just builds it up. They didn't start with the pulling of the leg and seeing full body apparitions. They started with things going slightly weird, and the fact that they all start at the same time. And I think that's kind of what the stopping of the clocks mean. But I don't think that there's anything significant about it.
It's interesting that they didn't even just go with the real time that they said, and not 5 in the morning, and they went with 3 in the morning. I wonder why.
Well, the witching hour is 3 in the morning.
What's the witching hour?
It's just kind of an old wives' tale that it's the hour in which the scary things of the world come out. Yeah. My mum always used to tell me on Halloween that I had to be asleep by 3 in the morning, because that's the witching hour. And that's when the ghosts and the ghouls come out. I'm sure there's a lot behind that folklore. But I've always thought of 3 in the morning. If you look out your window, you're going to see a witch on a broom, you're going to see a ghost crawling out of its hiding place, and it all kicks off.
Oh, your mum's got a lot to answer for, hasn't she?
I
know. Oh man, you know the bit where the mother first does, she goes into the daughter's bedroom and the daughter's talking to imaginary friend Rory, and she has this little toy that with a pop-up lid, and there's a mirror which spins around, and the little kid says to her mum, oh yeah, if you look at that spinning mirror and wait for the music to stop, and Rory will appear behind you or something. Like any time there's kids in horror movies with imaginary friends, or like, oh yeah, but Stephanie, yeah, she's sitting right there. Like it scares the hell out of me every single time, and it's like such a cheap, spooky thing that just works on me all the time.
You're so right. Like it's so creepy because kids actually do have imaginary friends. So I can imagine if you were watching the film and your daughter, you know, had an imaginary friend, you'd be like, oh my God, is she actually talking to a ghost?
It's like my sister used to have imaginary friends when she was I never really thought much about it at the time, but terrifying.
Maybe it was a ghost. I think there's an innocence to children that make them really scary because she doesn't know that she's talking to a ghost.
No.
I mean, if something popped up behind me in a mirror, I'd be so scared, but she was not scared. And so it's kind of like, la, 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 I've got a friend. You can see my friend too. And the fact that her mum actually did it looked in the mirror.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, come on. I would be like, no, thank you. You have your imaginary friend. I'll just stay over here.
Maybe we need to make a horror movie where it has all the tropes, but then the characters do the right thing each time, and then there's no movie.
It would be so short. Mummy, do you want to meet my imaginary friend? No, thank you. Goodbye. Do you want to play hide and seek? Nope.
Neither are you.
What's behind this wood paneling? Nothing. Okay, goodbye.
It just reminded me of so just before COVID had started and Sonic the Hedgehog was in the cinema.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I took my nephew to watch Sonic the Hedgehog in the cinema because he likes Sonic and he's only like 6 or 7 or something. And we got home and we decided to record a video of us reviewing the movie.
Oh yeah.
So at the time. So he picked up a whole bunch of these movie posters and goodies from the cinema. I think he was just super excited. So he brought home all this junk and whatnot. And so we're upstairs in my parents' bedroom and we're sitting on the floor. And I kind of rested the camera against like, I don't remember, some cabinet or something. And we pretended we were doing like a YouTube review, and like he's only a kid, so he watches all these YouTubers go, hey, like and subscribe, so he's just like so I'm like prompting him with questions on how to review the movie. I was like, what do you think, and blah blah blah. And then he whispers like every now and again he'd whisper in my ear because he didn't realize that you could just edit a video. He thought you had to like do in one big hit, so he'd whisper in my ear like asking me questions like, what's that actor's name or what.
Okay, yeah.
So we'd done this for about half an hour's worth of recording just to trim it down to like 2 minutes or whatever. But he then whispers in my ear, who's that man on the bed? And
oh my god.
And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, he's like, that there's the man on the bed. And I'm like too afraid to turn around and look at the bed because it was just me and him in the room.
Yeah.
And I mean, my parents' house is like an old Victorian house anyway, so it's a bit freaky anyway as it is. But so then I slowly turned at the bed and there's nothing there. And I'm like, whispered back in his ear, like, there is no man on the bed.
Oh, you're giving shivers up my spine.
I freaked out. I've still got the video and you can see the point where my expression changes.
And you slowly look behind you.
Yeah, no. I mean, the bed wasn't behind me. It was kind of like at my 2 o'clock.
Did he explain what?
Yeah, so we kept doing it, and I kept saying to him, like, there is no man on the bed. What are you talking about? So then he goes, yeah, what's his name? The one who's on the bed. And then I don't know. I think I had a bit of a horror movie moment where I got up and went to the bed, like, know. So because I was thinking, okay, he's only a kid. I don't know what possessed me to just get up. I mean, if it was just me on my own, I would have just run away. But
yeah.
I went to the bed and I looked, there's no one there. And then I saw it was one of his posters and he was referring to the picture of the guy.
Oh, so he's saying what's that man on the poster on the bed?
Yeah.
Oh, God. See, if that was a horror film and you'd got up to walk over to the bed, we would be shouting at them, so get out, don't go and look. So you actually did what we tell them not to do.
Exactly. And I think it was more to do with the fact that I felt a bit protective over him.
Yeah.
It's my sister's like only son. So I think maybe, long story, long tangent, maybe that's why the mother looked in the mirror.
Yeah. Okay, that genuinely makes more sense now that you've said that. Oh God, I keep looking in, behind my shoulder now, just in case.
Yeah, I don't even want to know what's behind me.
Yeah, that'd be a completely different podcast, talking about our paranormal experiences.
Now that's an episode I like to record at some point.
So, did you have a favorite scene in the film?
I don't. It's a bit of a weird one because I don't think I had any favorite scene in this movie. It was just there was a lot that I liked, a lot of little things that I liked.
Mm-hmm.
Like I kind of liked the fact that the movie was very simple. It was very clear who the villain was. It was very, the motivations were clear, and there was no kind of they weren't. I mean, this is the first movie in like what is like a 10-part series now or something in the Conjuring movie universe. And I like the fact that they weren't trying to build up future movies in this. They dedicated the entire runtime to this one movie. But I like little things in this film. Like I like the clapping scene.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, and when then the cupboard opens when the mother's wearing the blindfold and she's following the claps, and then you see these hands come out of the cupboard very slowly and just that was kind of freaky. I really liked the scene where the daughter is in bed and she's just looking at the dark corner in the room, and she's like, he's looking at us, he's looking at us, or she's looking at us. And the other sister gets up, goes to the corner, says, there's no one here, and she's like, she's right behind you. Like, just that kind of stuff just freaks me out. Like I'd said with the last week's movie, it's just watching this movie again, but with like a proper sound system this time around. Celia,
makes a massive difference.
You have to get something, even if it's just like a budget-y type thing, like get something with a sub. Like it just breathes new life into these things. It's kind of insane, really.
Wow.
And one thing I noticed with this movie that I bet there's loads of movies that do use this same thing, but there's a lot of, these old creaky houses. Like there's a lot of the sound effects in the movie are just bits of wood rubbing up and banging against other bits of wood. Yeah. And that just like, it was so noticeable this time around, and it bloody works. Like, and it's just, I don't know. Yeah, so I think that's probably a bit of a cop-out answer. So I didn't really have a favorite scene, but the stuff I've just described to you is stuff that I really, really enjoyed in this movie. How about yourself? Did you have a favorite scene?
Well, it's kind of like yours. There are things about the film that I really like. Like I said at the beginning, new ways of thinking about paranormal activity and ghosts, and the way that they play with people, I think is really fun. And like you said about the clapping, I thought that was a great scene. And also, I don't know if you could see it, but I was watching it on a laptop. Was there anything behind the door when she was saying there's something behind you? Because all I could see was black.
Yeah. So I watched it on the downstairs TV, and I, for the life of me, couldn't make out any detail in the back. So I was trying to, and in my head, I had a false memory where there was someone behind the door, but when I watched it this time...
I was waiting for eyes or something. Well, maybe that's the point. Like, you're supposed to question whether you could see something or not, and you're straining to try and see something.
That might be more powerful,
Yeah, I reckon that is. So I thought that was really cool. Like you said, I really loved the washing line scene.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah. That was so good. So she's putting the washing up on the washing line, and then there's a storm, and the wind blows a white sheet off the washing line, and it hits a body, and you see the outline of someone standing there. And what I love about that was the flow of, you see the outline of the body, and then the sheet goes up to that window, smacks against the window, and then it flies away, and then in the window you see Bathsheba looking at Lorraine. And I just thought that was brilliant, the whole flow of that, because you think you've had your scare.
Yes.
By seeing the figure behind the sheet, and then it gives you a second one, and she walks slowly away, and you know that the mum is in that room.
Yeah.
I thought that was so cool, and I haven't seen anything like that, I don't think.
Up until that point, there's a kind of a reprieve for about 10 minutes or something where the family's all together, they're all eating their breakfast together, and you think, okay, they're safe in numbers. Suddenly mum goes outside. I mean, no, Vera goes outside. That happens. Yeah. Don't see it coming.
It's so good. And I think, you feel that safety because the Warrens are there, and they know what they're doing. And so, you get this reprieve. You think that like they've got it under control. They're setting up all their bells. They're putting all their little Scooby-Doo, like you said, Scooby-Doo traps around. But that can't save you from Bathsheba the witch.
Oh dear. No. Was there another scene you liked or anything?
There was one other thing. It's not a scene, but it was just something that I picked up that I thought was really cool. So the mum, her kind of thing is that she's very motherly and she loves the children and she will do anything for her children. But I noticed that when around the time that she gets possessed by Bathsheba, there's like hints that she's changing before, there's the proper change. And she becomes fully...
the bruising and stuff like that.
Yeah, way before the bruising, before she goes all pale and starts being really weird at the end.
Yeah.
They hint to it by her not caring for her kids as much, because I noticed it twice.
Oh yeah.
So when one of the daughters sleepwalks and triggers some of the cameras, and she walks
when she's walking upstairs.
Yeah, and they all follow her, but the mother doesn't. I think it's like she doesn't care anymore. She doesn't care about what. And then the door closes and they're all banging on the door.
Get
her out. And the mum's not there.
Yeah.
And so I think because the dad is trying to get in. And normally Carolyn is, she does everything for her kids.
Yeah.
She would have been right there. And then they bang open the door and, he goes over to his daughter, and then Carolyn walks in and she just stands by the door. Doesn't scream, doesn't like run towards her daughter or anything like that. She just stands there.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, there's something going on there, because she's not normally like that. And then it happens again when the other daughter gets her hair pulled. Well, I say pulled like it's just somebody twigs her hair. No, she gets thrown around the room.
Oh, the proper poltergeisty moment. Yeah.
The poltergeisty moment. I noticed that the mum's just standing in the corner with no expression on her face.
I need to watch that bit again. I did not pick up on that.
Yeah. And she just doesn't look like she cares at all. And so that's why I was like, oh, that's really clever, because it's the opposite of who she is.
Yeah.
And her motherhood is what brings her out of the exorcism in the end anyway. When Lorraine's like, remember your kids, remember the beach that you went to, and that kind of helps her out of it. So clearly her kids are everything to her. But I just thought that was really interesting that they decided to show her disconnect, because it's not really her anymore.
Yeah. At what point do you think the mother first was kind of tainted by the spirit? Where did it happen?
I think it was from the first bruises. So that first night that they stayed there, I reckon Bathsheba latched onto her. Yeah. From the very beginning, and she slowly kind of,
Was there a point of contact where it first happened, or was it just? Was she just I don't know, just enveloped when she walked into the house for the first time or something?
Yeah, because I think she was probably targeted because she was the mother. And well, this is just my theory, because I don't know if there's any point, because she gets the bruises straight away after the first night where not really much else happens. And I do think those bruises are from the beginning of the possession. So I think she probably just latched onto her and slowly started kind of feeding off her or whatever she was doing to try and taint her. What do you think?
I don't know. Because once the bruising started to happen, I was like, wait, when did this start? What happened? Like, what triggered this? Like, was she? But then I was thinking, like, had the first, she has the moment where she goes downstairs and all the pictures fall down off the wall.
Yeah.
And one interesting thing about that was they hung up the pictures before they even painted the walls.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Crazy.
But there's the bit where she goes down I think she's like kind of pushed down the stairs into the basement. Is that?
Yeah.
Was she bruising before that bit?
Yeah, she was, because it was definitely I think it was one of the first nights she gets bruised. So I think it was before that happened, because that was a pretty serious, I think she went to the Warrens after that incident.
Yeah.
So that must have been at least a quarter of the way through.
Yeah.
And the bruises were happening before then. So, yeah.
Yeah. On an unrelated note, something I did like about this movie is there was this kind of confidence with the camera pans and the way the camera kind of like pushed in or zoomed in a few times, which was quite seamless. And it was just really confident camera motions. And generally with horror movies, they tend not to be that experimental with their camera moves.
Yeah.
Like how a Hollywood blockbuster Transformers movie would be or something. I thought that was kind of cool. It just reminded me of Sam Raimi's like Evil Dead movies, like a few of the motions.
Just gives it that kind of dynamic element to it, doesn't it? Where you can play around with the way that you use the set, because really they don't move very often, like we were saying before. So figuring out how you, and maybe it's what you were saying before about you're kind of seeing it through the eyes of whatever's possessing the house.
Possibly,
So
I didn't think of that. That's quite, you might be right there actually. And
like moving through the house and panning forwards, panning back, kind of gliding around almost.
Gliding around, yeah, because some of the, it's quite smooth, some of the camera motion. And also I thought there were points where the film looked super grainy, and I was thinking, oh, are they making it look like it was shot in the 70s or something, like and it's only I read up afterwards that was entirely intentional. Like
okay,
they had studied horror movies of the 70s and tried to make it look like that. So I thought it was quite,
well, I suppose it adds to that authenticity, doesn't it? Of it's a true story and this is a real family.
Yeah. I mean, so CD, like, it makes it very clear at the beginning of the movie that this is like based on a true story, right? Yeah. Now, I have not read up on the true story. I don't know anything about it, and I don't know if I want to read up about it. But like, I think ever since we started this podcast, I know you've watched this film a few times, and I know you like it, and I've just always wanted to discuss that true story element with you. And I don't know if you do know anything about it, please do educate me.
Yeah, well, it's actually pretty simple. They say, Ed and Lorraine Warren, that everything in this film, apart from one element, is true. So can you guess what that one element is?
That was not true.
That was not true. There was one thing that they did in the film that wasn't true. Everything else was true.
What? Okay, I thought you were going to say there was like loads of things that were just...
I mean, I'm talking about the main story, like the whole...
What could not have been true? Interesting. I bet someone died or something. Maybe.
No, no, they would have kept that in. That's good. That's good for the ratings. I'll give you a clue. It's about reputation.
Let me guess. Either Ed and Lorraine Warren were like crooks, or the family faked it or something. Is it one of those?
No, it's not that big. No, it's not that big. Think smaller. Think everything is true apart from one tiny element. It was one tiny thing. Not tiny, but
I give up.
One more guess.
No idea. I'm drawing a blank here.
So the only thing that they say they did differently was Ed never performed the exorcism at the end.
What? Okay.
Since it can only be done by a Catholic priest. So when it was talking about, I was saying about reputation, I think they were very clear that they didn't do it because they didn't want to get reprimanded.
Yeah.
For doing it. So whether that's true or not in terms of if they were just saying that they didn't do it and then they put it in the film, I don't know. But they say that that's the only thing that wasn't true throughout the film. So Lorraine always claimed to be a clairvoyant and a medium, the real Lorraine Warren, and had this ability to communicate to spirits and demons.
Yeah. And
up to the day that she died, so Ed passed away in 2006 and she passed away in 2009.
Yeah.
Lorraine maintained that almost every single detail of The Conjuring is accurate. And like you said before, she was a major consultant on all the sequels, prequels, this film, next film, all of them. She was really involved in consulting on them and making sure that they had accurately portrayed her relationship and the details of the stories. And what I found interesting was the aftermath of, so after the possession and everything in the film ends, Roger Perron, the father, apparently in real life, apparently kicked the Warrens out of the home, concerned about his wife's mental stability.
What?
So, saying that she couldn't handle it and that they needed to leave. And according to Andrea, who's their oldest daughter, the family couldn't afford to move out of the house. And then until 10 years later. So
they stayed there for 10 years.
10 years.
Well, that was made up in the movie then as well, then, wasn't it?
Exactly. That the end, well, I suppose that's something that you could say wasn't true. And they said most of the hauntings continued.
Wow.
Over those 10 years.
So what happened?
So they said that, they exorcised Bathsheba. And at that point, Roger was like, we can't do this anymore. Like, it's too much. You need to leave. And for the next 10 years, they stayed in that house. And actually, interestingly, a woman named Bathsheba actually lived next door to that farmhouse, because there's she's buried in a cemetery with her husband, and you can see her name on the grave.
Yeah.
Next to her husband and her son. Her name's Bathsheba. So it's a real person.
Oh man, we need to do a road trip and go see this house.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to have to plot out a map of all the haunted houses around.
Oh,
but it didn't look like the house that they shot it in. It was a lot smaller. But yeah, apparently all of the exorcism and the hauntings and everything was exactly how it was in real life. I don't know how much of it I believe, I have to admit. I am a bit of a skeptic.
Sure.
Only because in my mind, it's like, I don't know how you feel about it, but that was so obviously evidence of ghosts. Like, it was so obvious, but why don't we all know about it?
Yeah.
Like, why isn't it just part of, oh, by the way, we now know ghosts exist because we have all this evidence? But we don't.
No, where are the video recordings or the it's weird how you can get a video recording of, I don't know, an eagle riding on the back of a whale who's doing this or whatever, but you can't get a single.
Exactly. You could take a photo of a black hole about a billion light years away, but you can't show us evidence that ghosts exist.
Unless it's like a little grain of dust and then it's an orb or something. I don't know. It's strange because mentally I try to debunk where I can and just try to make sense of it, but there's still something about hearing a story and it's still sending shivers up your spine. And there's still something about that. And
and I think also the fact that it's like the people in the story are still alive. The children of the story are still alive and they're still saying that it happened. It is quite close to home. We're not talking about Victorians that left behind a diary that said, "Oh, forsooth, I saw a ghost and I was very scared." They've sat down for interviews. Andrea, the oldest daughter, has done quite a few interviews about it.
Wow, and they all corroborate each other's story.
Yeah.
That's insane. That is insane, yeah.
And she said she watched her mother while she was being exercised. Is that the right word? Yeah. And that she was speaking in a tongue that was not her own. So she was speaking a language that she didn't know. Which, maybe evidence, maybe not.
That is freaky. Yeah.
And I do think it just gives this film, like I said at the beginning, a sense of gravitas that even a skeptic can question and say, oh, well, even if you did a little bit of research and find that Bathsheba is a real person, that these were real families, the photos at the end, it might just make you think, oh.
Yeah, it's when they show those photos over the credits at the end where it gets a bit real. Yeah.
I like that. I like it when films do that and they show the reality and it brings it home. You're like, oh yeah, no, these are real people.
Yeah. So I just looked into a bit of the background of that house thing, and I noticed a little factoid. So 8 generations of families lived and died in the house before the Perrons moved in.
Wow.
Andrea Perron suggested that some of the spirits might have been that of families that had never left. Deaths included 2 documented suicides, a poisoning death, the rape and murder of an 11-year-old, drownings, and the passing of 4 men who froze to death. Most deaths occurred within the Arnold family, from which Bathsheba Sermon was descended.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, so the state of Rhode Island actually doesn't require home sellers to disclose any kind of history of that kind of stuff.
So they don't have to say people were murdered, died, poisoned,
criminal
killed.
activity, paranormal stuff. Yes, anything like that to do potential buyers, which is why the parents were unaware.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, you could say, okay, there's 8 generations of people who have lived in that house from that family. But really, let's say, I don't know, 4 times 8, 32. Let's say it's like that 32 is not that many.
Yeah.
And to put in that 4 people have frozen, people have been poisoned, people have been murdered, that feels like a very high rate.
That is.
Of abnormal deaths.
Yeah, that's like rolling a 6 a lot.
Yeah. You're either very lucky or very unlucky. That would be so annoying to move to a house and then realise that they didn't have to tell you that something happened at the house.
No. James Wan, who was, I think, working on the script late once, he'd just adopted a new puppy, and he said something like, when he was writing the script, the puppy just started staring in a certain side of the room and started to growl aggressively. And Wan was saying how the puppy's head then kind of turned and followed something across the room, but James didn't see anything.
No.
Freaky.
I was going to say maybe it's because he was reading out loud, and then they found the dog dead outside, and he's very sad, and his dog's like, "What?"
He's like, what?
Slowly turns his head. Oh, that's creepy.
Apparently, in the Philippines, some cinemas had to hire Catholic priests to bless the viewers before watching the movie. And,
wow.
Yeah, and apparently this was due to a disproportionately high number of viewers reporting that they had, they felt like a negative presence after watching the movie. So
Wow.
Yeah. Another kind of cool thing was so this film is R-rated.
Okay.
Yeah, which is it's expected. However, the film contains no sex, no nudity, hardly any profanity. And the violence is fairly tame and bloodless.
Yeah.
And there's brief depiction of alcohol, and there's no smoking. But it managed to get an R rating.
R rating. So it's all horror, gore,
based on the scariness. Yeah.
I do think that if this had anything other than an R rating, it's surprising because it's the only thing that it has in this film. But I think that it would have taken away from how scary it is if it also had the other things like nudity, profanity, things like that. Because this film is very much about scaring people out of their, what's the phrase? I was going to say out of their shoes, but I really don't think that's a phrase.
Out of their mind.
Out of their mind, out of our minds. And so I kind of like that it got an R rating purely because it's a scary, scary film. Yeah. One bit that was really scary, and I forgot about it until just now, was when Lorraine Warren falls down that crawl space into the basement, and then the legs of Bathsheba are hanging. And then the legs turn around and come flying towards her. Oh my God.
Just that whole claustrophobia and that was probably the most uncomfortable part of the movie.
It's so scary because you don't get a break. Like, you feel like you can have a bit, like you said, the respite. Oh, they're having breakfast, they're okay. Oh no, something really scary happens. Then someone gets possessed. Then you see a full body apparition. Then somebody's behind a door. One after the other. You just can't get enough.
Yeah, so the last kind of bit of trivia I've got here is so the real Bathsheba Sherman was suspected of witchcraft and of killing her infant child, or an infant child.
An infant child.
Yeah, but her name was actually legally cleared, and she was found not guilty. And she died of natural causes in 1885, not by hanging, as the movie shows.
Yeah,
and she was buried in Rhode Island, as you described.
Yeah, I suppose loads of people were cast off as witches for absolutely no reason other than that they were women. So it's actually quite nice to hear that she did just die of natural causes, and because I get really sad when I hear stories of that she was a witch and she was kind of hung or burnt at the stake, because they're not. They're just women.
They're just women.
And so actually it's kind of a good ending that she just died naturally, as bad as that is.
Yeah, talking about women, I think one of the reasons why I'm drawn to the Conjuring movies as well is it's just nice seeing Lorraine Warren. She is the hero of these movies, really. She's a woman, and she's not like one of these damsel in distress types. She's like the one who leads the pack when it comes to investigating the ghosts and whatnot.
Absolutely. Like Ed tries to tell her at the beginning to stay home because she's weak. Yeah. And she was like, I'm not having it. Like, we're a team. I'm coming with you. You need me. I need you. And what was nice is there was an equality to it with, they needed each other for different things. And without the both of them, and I think that's probably why their relationship is so good as well, because it feels like they need each other for different things. And absolutely, Lorraine is the star of the show. She's the person that drives it forwards. And I think it's because she has whatever the gift is.
Yes.
She has this kind of foresight and insight to really make you feel for her and the other characters. And
her acting is phenomenal in that respect.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. And she really cares about the characters. She cares about Carolyn, and she cares when she gets possessed. She wants her to be better. Like, she's trying her hardest to get her. And it's actually a moving tale as well. as a scary one. I think there was one thing about the film that I didn't like, and I wondered what you thought, and it was the ending.
Which part of the ending?
Just the end. You actually said at the beginning that you thought it was wrapped up in a nice bow and it was finished. And I actually have the opposite opinion.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because I thought that, okay, they exorcised Bathsheba, the witch. But what about Rory? What about the other ones?
I forgot about him.
Exactly. Like, what happened to the rest of them? And I guess, like, the true story about them still being haunted, you know, throughout the 10 years kind of is a testament to the fact that, I don't know, they were just really happy that like the mum was back and there was like sun and they were all hugging each other. And I was like, but the house is still teeming with ghosts. Are they all just going to go back in and like watch TV?
Yeah, I suppose it's because the other ghosts in the movie, at least, they don't do anything. They just kind of are. Like Rory doesn't do anything, but it's Bathsheba who's the one who's kind of like that kind of, you know, sitting
on top of cupboards waiting to
that
was really scary. I don't know, there was just something about it where they all seemed too happy and too like relieved. Like I wouldn't go back into that house after that, knowing that there's still like 10 other ghosts that haven't found peace.
I think you make a good point. Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, that was the only thing I didn't like about it.
I can totally imagine why this movie was such an insane hit when it first came out. Made a ridiculous amount of money, but obviously after watching a lot of more modern horror movies since then, you know, the film is starting to show its age a little bit, but not in a bad way. But you can kind of see how a lot of other horror filmmakers kind of took a lot of the elements that worked in this movie and kind of ran with them and ramped them up. So it's kind of so yeah, I suppose by today's standards it seems a bit tame, but it's still a solid movie, solid beginning, middle, end, very easy to understand story. It's one of those kind of stories where you don't even need to speak English to understand it. It's fairly universal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are different types of horror films. There's the ones that knock your socks off because they're really scary, like this one. There's the ones that make you think, like Us.
Yes.
And then there are ones that are cinematically amazing, like The Shining.
Yeah.
And so you've got different elements in all these different films. And then you've got ones that don't really hit the mark. I'm not naming any names. And so there are just different ways of portraying horror, and this is just one of those good old-fashioned horror films that's quite satisfying.
100%.
We hope you enjoyed this month's Fright Fix. Join us next month as we'll explore a new horror film. We will be posting the movie a few days before the podcast episode is released on our social media, so be sure to follow us at Fright Fix if you want to watch the film ahead of time.
If you would like to send us a message or want us to cover a scary movie on an upcoming episode, please feel free to contact us on Instagram or Twitter, or email us at podcast@frightfix.com.
See you next time.